Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, the U.S. is deporting a Chinese billionaire over election interference. What we know about who he donated to and how. Retaliation against Chinese espionage, Washington striking back at Beijing following last year's spy balloon incident. A look at the latest U.S. move taken on 37 Chinese entities found to have links to it. The U.S. House Committee on China investigating details into one university's ties to a Chinese counterpart with no links to the Chinese military. And Chinese diplomats are getting expelled from an Indo-Pacific neighbor, the Philippines, calling for immediate action against the Chinese embassy's alleged malign influence operations. What's behind the call to oust them? The U.S. kicked a Chinese billionaire out of the country Thursday. That's for attempting to interfere with U.S. elections through fraudulent donations. Billionaire Hui Qing is a Chinese film mogul. Court filings show that between 2021 and 2022, Qing recruited others to donate around $11,000 on his behalf without the campaigns knowing he was behind the money. As a result, campaign committees filed false contribution reports with the Federal Election Commission. Qing reimbursed the individuals that donated on his behalf. Who did he donate to? Prosecutors didn't name the politicians, only saying they were a candidate for New York City political office, a U.S. representative on Long Island, and a candidate for a Rhode Island congressional district seat. Media reports identified 3 names using records: New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Alan Fung, a Republican who ran for Congress in Rhode Island but failed, and Representative Andrew Garbarino, the U.S. representative for New York's 2nd congressional district. Here's what campaign finance records show. Qing donated $2,000 to Eric Adams in 2021, the same year he was elected mayor of New York City. Qing's green card holder status means he can't donate more than $2,100. Prosecutors said 9 months after he made that donation, he started looking for people who could donate more. A man named Jonathan Chow donated $1,000 to Eric Adams on December 9, 2021. He also gave $5,800 to a committee of Alan Fung. He also funneled $2,900 to a committee of Representative Andrew Garbarino. Qing personally donated $2,900 to Alan Fung's campaign. NTD reached out to Eric Adams and Representative Garbarino for comment, but did not immediately hear back. In addition, Qing lied about never having used another name in his green card application. He also lied to obtain a Florida driver license. Qing pleaded guilty. He would give up his green card and has boarded a plane to leave the U.S. Washington is fighting back against the Chinese spy balloon incident that erupted last year. The Biden administration added 37 Chinese entities to its trade restriction list Thursday. Allegedly, the now restricted companies had supported Beijing in sending the spy balloon across the U.S. On top of that, another handful of Chinese firms were also added to the list. They were accused of stealing American know-how to make Chinese drones. Some drones ended up in the hands of China's and Russia's militaries. The U.S. has been using the list to counter China's technology theft. Getting added to it makes it harder for U.S. suppliers to ship goods to the targeted entities. What's more, another Chinese state-owned group will soon hit the list. The Commerce Department accuses it of stealing U.S. technology to advance China's quantum capabilities. Media have labeled the group as a top military equipment supplier for Beijing. Quantum technology is critical for defense. Quantum sensors provide more secure and accurate navigation than GPS. Facing Washington's new trade restrictions, China said it will safeguard its companies and accused Washington of bullying them. President Joe Biden is set to announce new China tariffs as soon as next week. That's according to Reuters, citing 2 sources. The tariffs will reportedly target sectors including electric vehicles. The full announcement could happen as soon as Tuesday. It's expected to largely maintain existing levies. One source noted that the measure would target sectors including semiconductors and solar equipment. Details on the precise value or categories of tariffs that would be imposed are unclear. At a press conference Friday, the president of a European Union business lobby group in China said he expects more tariffs and probes in Beijing's trade practices.
I don't think anyone really is a fan of tariffs and probes and investigations, but it's a consequence of things being at a place where they're not supposed to be.
According to a survey by the EU Chamber of Commerce in China, the business and investment outlook in the country is spiraling to its lowest point in 20 years. Over a quarter of the participants said they are not optimistic about the prospect of doing business there. In recent years, China has been ramping up manufacturing despite low domestic demand. With the regime's leadership pushing for self-reliance, foreign companies have become more hesitant to expand their businesses in China. Instead, many of them are looking at regions like Southeast Asia and India. The U.S. Congressional Committee on China taking aim at the Georgia Institute of Technology. That's over its alleged ties to a Chinese military-linked university. The university in question is China's northeastern Tianjin University, which is facing U.S. government restrictions over its ties to China's military. The chairman of the House Select Committee on China wrote a letter to the president of Georgia Tech. It said the school partnered with Tianjin University on cutting-edge technologies despite its documented ties to the People's Liberation Army. The letter noted that Tianjin University and numerous affiliates were added to the Commerce Department's export restrictions list for actions that run contrary to U.S. national security. Among them, trade secret theft and research collaboration to advance China's military. A spokesperson from Georgia Tech said it welcomed the congressional inquiry, but said the university does not have a collaboration, research partnerships, or provide any funding to Tianjin University. U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo expressing grave concerns about the potential economic fallout for America if China were to invade Taiwan. She emphasizes one specific hypothetical event could be, quote, absolutely devastating. NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma has more.
A Chinese invasion of Taiwan and seizure of chips producer TSMC would be, quote, absolutely devastating to the American economy. That's how U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo described the impact if it were to happen. She was questioned during a U.S. House hearing. She declined to comment on how or if it will happen. But Raimondo noted that the U.S. buys 92% of its chips from TSMC in Taiwan. As well, the chip maker is investing $65 billion to its semiconductor production in Arizona. By the way, TSMC is the world's largest contract chip maker and a major supplier to Apple and NVIDIA.
The Philippines National Security Council calling for Chinese diplomats to be expelled on Friday. The country's national security advisor says the Chinese embassy's malign influence operations must be stopped. He called for the diplomats to be removed from the country immediately. This after a transcript of an alleged phone call of a Filipino admiral making a deal with the Chinese regime made headlines this week. The Philippines defense minister says the embassy officials would have broken an anti-wiretapping act. He also says transcripts can easily be fabricated and audio recordings can be manufactured by using deepfakes. The Chinese regime revealed an agreement with the Philippines from 2016, allegedly involving the access of some islands in the South China Sea. What's in this deal? Is it substantial, and why are they disclosing it now? NTD's Kevin Hogan spoke with retired Marine Colonel Grant Newsham, a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and the author of When China Attacks.
Well, the Chinese say that the agreement was reached between them and the former Philippine administration of President Duterte. And basically, it seems that the details aren't entirely clear, that the Chinese say the Philippines promised not to send any construction materials, even to send military or government ships to an island, an atoll that the Philippines owns, but the Chinese are threatening. The Philippines occupy it. The Philippines say No, we made no agreement about this. The Chinese say, yes, you did. The idea was to preserve the so-called status quo. And as I said, it's a vague agreement. It's a gentleman's agreement. There's nothing written. China's saying it exists. The Philippines are saying, well, no, it doesn't. And if there was anything, it was just some vague language between the former administration and you. So it really is a sort of an effort to distract on the part of the Chinese and to create some political difficulties for the current president of the Philippines, who has actually sided with the Americans against the Philippines, unlike his predecessor.
Right, that this was barring military access. However, it was allowing some of these small-scale fishing vessels in the region. But why would China unveil this so-called agreement now?
Well, they hate the current president of the Philippines because he has gotten closer to the United States. The U.S. military is now operating more in the Philippines, as are the Australians, the Japanese, and others. And they don't like this. And this is an effort to hurt the current president politically with midterm elections coming up next year. It's trying to split the support that President Marcos has. And it's a pretty transparent ploy. And even the Duterte camp, the ones who supposedly made the agreement, are saying, oh, well, maybe we had some discussions, but we didn't agree to anything that would give up Philippine sovereignty. And now it's a question of the Chinese saying, well, yes, you did, and the Philippines are saying, well, no, we didn't. And it's almost like talking to the mafia in a way about some imaginary agreement. So I feel sorry for the Philippines.
Grant Newsham, retired U.S. Marine Colonel and Senior Fellow at the Center for Security Policy, thank you for your time today.
Well, thanks for having me.
The Senate Armed Services Committee examining worldwide threats against the U.S. at a recent hearing. Numerous lawmakers focused on China and especially its ties to Russia. NTD's Virginia Gibson has more.
This new alignment of cooperation among China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea is a greater menace than we have faced in decades.
At a Thursday hearing of the Senate Armed Services Committee, numerous lawmakers focused on the threat posed by China, and especially its ties to Russia. Republican Senator Mike Rounds suggested the U.S. should be better prepared for a possible war on two fronts, because Beijing and Moscow have strengthened their partnership in recent years.
Basically, if we were to have a conflict with one, the chances are we would have a second front. And that the planning that we have to do includes confrontation and not just one front now.
Certainly, it's a possibility. The question of just how likely it is, I think, differs depending on the scenario, which I'm sure is obvious to you. But yeah.
A greater possibility now than what it was 2 or 3 years ago, though.
I think from the Department of Defense perspective, that would certainly be the case.
Another big topic at the hearing, cyber attacks, especially coming from China. Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines said cyber attacks against the U.S. increased by over 70% from 2022 to 2023.
Can you provide us with any examples of this type of malign cyber activity?
Both China and Russia effectively trying to pre-position themselves in ways that would allow them to conduct those kinds of attacks.
She added that there are some sectors that are especially at risk, such as water and wastewater, agriculture and food, energy and defense. Republican Senator Rick Scott grilled the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency on pharmaceuticals coming from overseas.
How big a risk do you think it is on ingredients in our drugs from China for our military?
I don't know that I know enough about that topic to be able to speak on that.
Does it surprise you guys that so many of the ingredients in our drugs are coming from China when they're at the same time trying to kill Americans through, fentanyl? And
I don't believe that I'm surprised by how the market has developed over years and decades, and then where we find ourselves today.
Other topics at the hearing were the rising threat of terrorism, such as from Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, and others, the wars in Israel and Ukraine, and a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
Coming up, as the high-tech showdown between Washington and Beijing heats up, players in the AI race are choosing sides. Find out where a Saudi Arabian AI firm stands. The Biden administration ramping up efforts to protect American AI from China and Russia. The new front, core software of advanced AI models like ChatGPT. And a grand parade in Manhattan Friday. Practitioners of Falun Dafa gathered to celebrate the anniversary of World Falun Dafa Day. More on the details after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Players in the race for artificial intelligence taking sides as the high-tech standoff between Washington and Beijing intensifies. An investment fund from Saudi Arabia noting the U.S. and its market is a top priority. Alat is a state-backed investment fund focused on AI and microchip development, and the Saudi firm says it would divest from China if Washington asked it to. Alat's CEO told Bloomberg that the U.S. has so far requested that the firm keep manufacturing and supply chains completely separate from both countries. But he added that the firm would divest if the partnerships with China would become a problem for the U.S. Saudi Arabia is gaining ground in AI development as it funnels in huge money. The country's public investment fund already injected $100 billion into Alat, with another $40 billion put into its partnerships with Silicon Valley. Bloomberg reports that Washington has been looking to make sure that money doesn't go towards helping China's AI ambitions. Alat's statement follows a similar report about United Arab Emirates-based AI firm G42. New details say a recent partnership between it and American giant Microsoft comes after negotiations with Washington, where the firm agreed to divest from China. The Biden administration is poised to open up a new front in its effort to safeguard American AI from China and Russia. The plan is to place guardrails around the most advanced AI models, the core software of artificial intelligence systems like ChatGPT. The Commerce Department is considering a new regulatory push to restrict the export of proprietary or closed-source AI models. A report says the software and data these models are trained on are kept under wraps. Any action would complement a series of measures put in place over the last 2 years to block the export of sophisticated AI chips to China. The move aims to slow Beijing's development of the cutting-edge technology for military purposes. Even so, it will be hard for regulators to keep pace with the industry's fast-moving developments. A Friday parade on the streets of Manhattan. Falun Dafa is a traditional Chinese spiritual practice based on truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Practitioners of the faith gather to celebrate World Falun Dafa Day with colorful costumes, uplifting music, and inspiring stories. NTD's Fiona Ji has the story.
I'm here on the streets of Manhattan where a parade celebrating World Falun Dafa Day is happening. Falun Dafa is a traditional Chinese spiritual exercise based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. If you look behind me, we've got so many colorful banners, practitioners dressed in bright yellow, and lots of lovely music and performances happening. The parade is headed by the Tianguo Marching Band. I actually had a chance earlier to speak with a few members of the marching band.
I'm very happy, of course, to attend parades every year. I do remember one year when we went back to Chinatown after not going for a very long time. Somebody came up to me, this elderly grandpa was like, "Oh, I'm very happy to see you guys again. I didn't see you guys for a couple years." And so that was really touching. I was like, oh, they still remember us, and it was nice.
Bystanders watching the parade expressed the positivity they felt from the performances.
This is a great parade. We love seeing it here in New York City. We're glad that the city is supporting the Chinese people and Falun Dafa. It's beautiful. So many people.
Falun Dafa was first introduced to the public in China in 1992 and quickly spread to millions of people all around the world, including the United States.
Back then, we put the Zhuan Falun onto the internet so people around the world can read it. I've met people from England, from Africa, who learn Falun Gong through the internet. The principle of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance really, is a universal value. So everybody embrace it. And in addition, the 5 gentle exercises really help improve people's well-being, not just physically, but mentally. So it's been very popular.
Yeah, I think it gave me just an earlier awareness of like how to be kind and considerate of the people around me. I remember when I was a kid, whenever I did get sick, I would always prefer to meditate with my mom because it just always made me feel a lot better.
Falun Dafa is a peaceful spiritual exercise that millions of people practice all around the world. However, it is brutally persecuted in mainland China. What did you experience under this persecution?
Too much. Illegally detained 6 times, sexually abused, deprived of sleep 9 days. And I was almost detained when I was pregnant in China in 2008. And at least 6 of my fellow practitioners were persecuted to death.
Another practitioner told me how he is trying to raise awareness here in the United States about the brutal persecution still happening in China today. But despite all the difficulties, every practitioner I talked to displayed positivity and hope for the future.
I try to reach out to our representatives. In this free nation, I learned that I can write to our Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and to get her attention on the persecution.
Falun Dafa practitioners are here on the streets today to bring their beliefs to the public. They share a message of hope, of peace, and of quiet strength to the entire world. Fiona G, NTD News.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you soon.